Welcome back to Basin Motorsports for another day here in the garage. So today is going to be the finale to our YouTube collaboration for 2020. Now we're going to do something a little different on the answers. These are going to be my answers to the 15 questions, and the interviewers are going to be those that we've previously featured here on the channel. So they're going to ask the questions, I will give my answers, and then the series is done. So without further ado, let's jump into question number one.
Question number one. What is the first tool you should buy?
I think if you're going to get into anything automotive in that, the first tool or tool set you should buy is probably one of the big combo sets that is sockets and pliers in that. You can get probably 150, 200 pieces in that. Make sure you always double up on your 10 millimeters. And I think you can get a good set of just standard size sockets. You can get some extended length of the longer ones. And then you could probably just get some basic tools like screwdrivers, pliers, something simple that will kind of give you the chance to get your hands dirty a little bit as you kind of grow into everything. Yeah, I think with magazines and that continually going out of print, what you're going to see is that media is going to become more digital and I think more interactive. You've got magazines in that will probably transfer into digital content. So they'll still be able to do features and that, but I think where you were limited on print, you only had a certain amount, like 2 or 3 pages maybe for a car or a truck or anything else, to where you could have, you're limited on space really and content. When you go digital, what you can do is then really it's almost unlimited because you're limited to maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 pictures. Now you can go up to 20, 30, 40. You can really kind of get deep into these builds now. And then you're going to start to see more like the Motor Trend's been doing the Week to Wicked, where in 5 days they're basically turning a pretty nice car into something really, really good. You can now do that, and that almost is like a day behind the build. So you could almost do daily content like that, and you're starting to see a lot more creators that are doing that are doing daily or multiple times a week builds where it's very interactive. And I think that's where you're going to start to see magazines or however you want to call it, content becoming that way, where it's a lot more interactive and a lot more timely, and stuff will just sit out there and grow as it is.
Number 3 is, what technology do you look forward to the most in the future?
So I think the technology that I'm really looking forward to is kind of like the home versions of probably 3D printing. You're starting to see a lot of things that are now becoming metal 3D printing. Plastic was kind of there. It's been there kind of off and on for the last, 5 years? But you're starting to see that technology getting down into desktop models, and they're becoming a lot more affordable. You can get stuff down. It was, I think, 10 years ago, if you could find anything, it was like $10,000 and up. It was only really commercialized, and unless you were doing a huge volume of it, you really couldn't even get anything to scale necessarily. Now what you're seeing is the desktop stuff show up, and you can kind of get the home hobbyist into that, where they can now spend $1,000, $1,500, $200, or $2,000 on a 3D printer that can fit in their home garage. And all the parts that aren't made, maybe they've got kind of a niche vehicle or something else that they don't have stuff that's made now, they can now go out there and design it and make it themselves, and then they can always turn that into a business. So I think that'll be more important, the 3D printing coming out. I think right now I'm using the most of sockets. Socket set. I've done a lot of disassembly, reassembly over the last few years, taking couple different cars apart and that, and jumping back and forth between SAE and metric. I'm in that weird era where I'm working on cars that are in the 80s general, and that's where like Ford started switching over, and even the American stuff started switching from SAE to metric. So you're going to have both on there, so I'm jumping back and forth between sizes and that, but socket set, that's really what I'm using a lot of today.
What is your dream build?
So for this one, I get to walk you around here, show you. So this is my dream build. Right behind me is a 1980 Ford Mustang Notchback. This has got a 3-inch wide body on it. It's a V8 5-speed, 5-lug swap, all that. This is what I've wanted. So the backstory on this: in 1995, I lived in Dallas, and I had an acquaintance that had a black on black 93 coupe with a Vortec V1 supercharger on it. And I fell in love with this body style at that point. I had to have one. It took me about 20 years to finally get one, to get through like the career piece and all that stuff. So it took me 20 years to get this, or to get one of these. I had a 92, got wrecked, so that drivetrain and everything else got taken out of there, and this is an 80, so it's kind of the 4i you can see behind. I get up there, yeah, so you can see it's 4i in that. But this is kind of like my all-around car. Enough power to be scary, rear-wheel drive, 2-door coupe. It's got a vinyl wrap on it, which I had to learn how to do in that. So this is kind of my build. This is the thing that I really have always, or I guess I've wanted for 20 years, and that's my dream.
What is your biggest fear as a content creator?
I think the biggest fear I have of being a content creator is not appearing authentic. That's the biggest thing I think I have against a lot of other things, a lot of other content out there, is a lot of people don't appear to be authentic to me. And that's something, I guess, when I watch content, whether it's I want to read or I watch on YouTube or anything else, I always want to feel like, I guess, a connection, obviously, to the person or people creating the content. But I feel like if I think it's make-believe, then I'm just not really that interested. So I always hope that anybody who watches my content looks at it and thinks that guy, me, I'm genuine, I'm authentic. If you've met me in real life, you'd probably be like, yeah, he's just exactly like his videos show. A little bit goofy, a little bit crazy, but I'm genuinely me, and there's no facade here. Mistakes are mistakes, and that's who I am.
What is my next planned tool purchase?
So I think this year I've got the ambition, after watching a few other people, I want to build the wide body on my Mustang. I want to create that out of metal. So I'm going to change up the suspension a little bit, which is going to push the tires out further. And I don't know that the fenders I have that are fiberglass are going to cover the wheels in that once I get them pushed out to go around some other suspension pieces. So with that, I guess I could cut up the fenders more than I already have. But I thought about buying an English wheel. So that's going to be my tool this year. I want to buy an English wheel and recreate some big wide body metal fenders with that, and then probably use them, the MIG welder I have, to tack weld it and put it all together, and then become the grinder I am for welding. But English wheel for a metal wide body this year is my big thing.
Number 8, what automotive celebrity would you want to get coffee with that you've never met?
So I think the automotive celebrity, and I don't even know if he would be considered automotive anymore. The person I would like to meet that I never have would be Jesse James. He did Monster Garage back then, and I thought it was really kind of cool. Of course, back then he was more motorcycle. He's more West Coast choppers, and then he's in Austin now doing a lot of different stuff. But I think the guy, has seen the rise, and I won't say fall, but the stumble maybe at some point. He just seems like a genuinely interesting person, I think, that I could sit down and just have a good, interesting conversation with. Jesse James. So the car I would love to find abandoned in a warehouse or a barn or anything else is a De Tomaso Pantera. So backstory on that is in 1996, I was at All Ford Day at Bandimere Speedway because I lived in Colorado at the time. I just moved back. So I was there, and there was a Pantera there. And I had, I'd read about them and all that, but I'd never really seen one in person. And I always thought, oh, that's a kind of a cool car. So I actually got to see one in person. It was very clean, very well restored, kept up. And I just went over this thing top to bottom. They really weren't very known, I guess you'd say. And I always, since that point, thought, man, that's the car. I would love to have a Pantera just to restore, maybe do a little bit of an upgrade on, and that. But I just feel like that is a classic shape that I would love to have in my garage one day.
What is the worst automotive trend in the last 5 years?
I am going to give that as Plasti Dip. And I know Plasti Dip, if you do it right and with multiple layers in that, it can come out very, very good. I have seen way too many people kind of skimp on it or not use enough, and it ends up ruining paint. It gets everywhere. They just didn't do a great job at using it, and it just becomes a nightmare to get back off. So I think Plasti Dip is probably the worst thing I've seen. Not at fault because of Plasti Dip. I think it's the people using it that don't use it well or do use it right, that it has become the trend that I just go, oh, another Plasti Dip car, and that you just know that that's going to end badly.
What's the next big automotive trend in the next 5 years?
I think the next trend that you're going to see is going to be a lot more, I'm going to call them monster builds or whatever you want to call it, but a lot of the kind of these crazy renders being built into real life. Now I know if you guys are watching content and that, you've probably seen Kaisel Celine. He kind of did this crazy Lamborghini one for BS for Build, did for SEMA this year in 2019. That started as a render, basically, you know, the LS swap, twin turbo at the back, kind of the crazy, I guess you'd call it a crazy Lamborghini kind of render or a concept. It actually, they built it pretty darn close. And I think you're going to see that a lot more where you get artists that can draw or now 3D render on, you know, Photoshop or whatever it was. You know, they're not going to be the kind of these chunked up, nasty drawn cars, but they're going to be these really high class, high quality builds that are going to be based on real 3D animation or 3D drawings. And I think you're going to see that a lot more where render to reality becomes the case. I think the worst job I ever had was a summer job I had between college, and it was building van bodies, and it just wasn't the job for me. I think I worked there 2 weeks and I was like, I can't do this. This isn't for me. It was basically building, you know, you get like an E350 van or something like that in, that you would basically assemble box vans, right? The beds of them that go on there, you'd build those out of extrusions and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't the job for me. I think I made it 2 weeks and I was like, I'm out. I can't do this. So that was definitely my worst job. Probably the least work job for me too, about 2 or 3 weeks. And I'd say anybody that's willing to work with me, because I know I'm a special case. But really, honestly, probably the one person that I would just love to put my car against his car side by side would be Kyle Voss at the Fab Forums. I'd love to just walk around his shop, especially his new shop, for just an hour to looking around stuff, and to put the WideFox, my wide body, against his Grey Goose just to see how they compare. They're only a couple of model years apart, but they are vastly different cars with powertrains and modifications and that. So I think putting those side by side would be fun, and then just sit down and having a beer at his new shop would be fantastic. Or he can come out to Oregon and we can play around the farm a little bit.
What events are you attending in 2020?
So for events for 2020 for me, it's kind of mixed. I really would like to get my wide body out, get it to the track, so it'll be a lot of local SCCA. I may do Good Guys in Pleasanton, California again, maybe once or twice there, and I'd also like to autocross down there. And then I've been debating if I want to go back to SEMA next year. Not sure if I will or I won't, but you know, like last time I went, it was like 3 weeks ahead of time or a month ahead of time I had sent everything in. So it'll probably be the same way. It'll probably be like Labor Day before I even start to think about going to SEMA or not.
Okay, number 15. What is your favorite car or truck of all time?
This one for me is probably going to be shocking a little bit to people, but I have loved this car since I was a kid. And it's going to be up here if I can show you a poster up here. If I span it behind, you can see it up there. That is a Lamborghini Countach. So I've had that poster, I don't even know. It's from the 80s, I know that, because I love nostalgia, especially auto nostalgia. You can see there that it's a Lamborghini Countach, and I've had that poster for, I don't know, 30 years, I bet. And if I could have one in my garage, I probably wouldn't, because I've heard they're horrible on maintenance and everything else. But that's always been my favorite car of all time, and there are a ton out there that I would love to own. But that's probably the one I've liked the longest, probably, other than maybe a 63 split window Corvette. My uncle got me one of those early on when I was probably 10, and I don't know what I did with it, but I had a metal model of it back then, and I was like, oh man, that's the car. I'd love to have one of those. So maybe one or two, Corvette or a Countach. Those are my top ones. All right, I want to say thank you to all of those that participated with me this year, trying something a little bit different, something new, and to get a little bit more exposure out to fellow content creators, whether they're in the US or in Canada. Now this series is done. We're talking about doing a future series. We have no questions established yet, so if you have questions or you would like to see other people join the collaboration, let me know, drop them down in the comments. If you like this series, let me know. I'd like to hear your opinion on any of the questions. You thought the questions were relevant or not. And again, the fun part about it is with the pandemic and everything going on now, and who knows what it's going to be in the future, some of these answers are dated. They're 4 or 5 months old, and well, that's what happens. Things change with time. So again, thanks to everybody that showed up and helped out with the collaboration this year. I appreciate you very much giving me your time, and that's it. We'll see you next time from Basin Motorsports.